Welcome back. You're watching News Center. Now I want us to continue with that discussion of the Deputy President being barred from going to Uganda. And of course, my guest this morning, we have Alex Matere, who is a policy expert here in studio, and also Joe Halende, a political strategist, joining us via Zoom. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Of course, Joe, coming to you before we went for that break, we saw Alex say that, someone of that stature needs to conduct themselves in a manner that is honorable and respectable. Do you think that the Deputy President did the opposite of that?
Pardon?
What are your thoughts about the issue of the Deputy President being barred from going to Uganda?
Yes, the Deputy President has conducted himself in a proper and in accordance to what the rules, regulation, and the Constitution stipulates, that he conducts himself in accordance with the position that he holds. Because on that particular day at Wilson Airport, according to me, the President refrained himself from going overboard and start having an exchange with the officers who are restraining him from traveling to Uganda. Then the second thing, the Deputy President has come out to say that he is not going to exchange words with all the officers who are engaged in that scheme to deny him his fundamental right to movement. Because if you look at our Constitution chapter 4, and you go specifically to Article 39, which gives every citizen of this country freedom to movement and residence anywhere. So if we have reached to an extent that Jubilee government has collapsed to an extent that it starts to infringe and stop or interfere with its citizens' rights, then we are going on the wrong direction as a country, and Jubilee government has failed on that. And in another argument, we need to be a country that respects the rule of law. And the former CJ, Justice Maraga, spoke to this issue to a larger extent and advised the president accordingly. So I don't think that the Deputy President is the one who is having the problem, but it's the problem with the state, with the deep state and state capture people who have turned this country into a despotic country.
Okay, Alex, coming back to you, and let me be the devil's advocate here for once. Yes, you did mention that he needs to conduct himself in a certain manner, but then at the same time, do you think the state handled that situation well?
First and foremost, allow me to respond to what my friend Joe is talking about. And the problem of subscribing to the Tanga narrative is that he also subscribed to the self-confessed slow learner attitude. And these are the kind of people that haven't read the rules and regulations governing the conduct of public officers. They do not even read the Constitution. And I think it would be important for me to avow publicly that one of the things that the Constitution requires of a public officer, immediately you take the oath of office, even if you are a public or a state officer, you no longer enjoy what you call private life. Everything that you do has to bring honor and respect to that particular office that you're carrying. Secondly, and just taking cue of that, I think it will also be important for me to mention that if a Deputy President has a bilateral relation to do with a project or to do with any business initiatives in a neighboring country, then he's supposed actually to travel with the people that have been mandated by government to be in charge of such dockets. That would include the CS in charge of East African Affairs. It will include the CS in charge of trade, which is very, very important. But the kind of minions that he was carrying along in his trip, Oscar Sudi, who does Oscar Sudi represent in as far as the business of this country is concerned? The kind of suspicious characters from Turkey that he was also tagging along. And this is the kind of disrepute that we bring to this particular country. Thirdly, there's also an aspect of international relations. If, for instance, the Deputy President wants to carry out the kind of businesses that he was carrying and he gets himself in problems in Uganda, who now has to take responsibility? It will boil down to the same people that he is accusing of not having allowed him to travel to Uganda. And just to bring it to a close, as far as your question is concerned, yes, I think the regulations are very clear. that for a public officer and a state officer to leave this particular country, then there are certain documentation that you're supposed to have. Even Joe, who is my friend, a very close friend of mine, if he wants to travel from here to Uganda, definitely he knows that he needs his passport. If there are countries that require visa, you need to have your visa. Those are the requirements for a private citizen. But if you're a public officer, the standing order is very clear that you're supposed actually to get authorization from the head of public service. And I've had some of them debating and trying to disparage the fact that he's a deputy president, so he's not supposed actually to have gotten permission to travel. It's not even an issue of getting permission. It's an issue of informing the relevant office so that they know our deputy president is in safe hands, and even if he gets there, he has to be accorded the presidential reception that he deserves. And also to add on that is the aspect that it's important that as we go on with the kind of politics that we're expecting in 2022, we should not have an indication or a notion that we are having external forces who are going to influence the kind of politics that we want to have. For instance, you haven't seen the ODM leader Raila Odinga traveling to Uganda and having that kind of close interaction with the president of Uganda, or traveling to Tanzania and having the same thing. And I think it boils down to what government has to offer, because if you are second in command, then also the international relations policy of your country, you are the one who carries it, whether in private life or in public life.
All right, you talked about authorization, and I just want to bring this in before we head to Joe. In September of 2017, Joseph Kinyua, who is the head of public service, announced that the government officials were banned from traveling outside the country unless they had permission from the president. But while it touched on the top cadres of the executive, the order did exclude the deputy president. Besides, this is not the first time he has gone for a foreign visit or a trip or a private visit, and he hasn't been barred before.
I will approach that question in twofold. One is that the head of public service is also the chief of staff, and is also the secretary to the cabinet. The deputy president is a member of the cabinet. If, for instance, there is a circular that has been actually presented and released in the effect that cabinet secretaries, parastatal heads, and heads of sagas and government departments are not supposed to travel without getting clear authorization from that particular office, then I think it also boils down to the deputy president at least having informed the president of the intentions that he has to do. For instance, for them, it was a ticket. That one we have to agree that for them it was a ticket, and it's about mutual respect for each other. For instance, even our earlier days, our formative days in school, when you are going to primary and secondary school, it would have been very cantankerous for the deputy principal of your school to just disappear from the school without informing the headmaster where he is going. And I think that is the kind of scenario that we are having. Even if he has to go out, let him inform the boss that is going out, let him get the papers documented, let him get the security apparatus working for him, let him get a presidential let him be received in a presidential manner in the country that he is going to visit. And that can only be organized, again, with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. The deputy president does not have a secretariat that can liaise with the other country to organize that kind of a reception. It has to be organized that. And I think that is the essence, that we need to have respect to the kind of institutions that we have. And we also need to have respect and teamwork in as far as the government running is concerned.
All right, coming to you, Joe. Yes. Yesterday, the deputy president did say that President Uhuru Kenyatta was aware of this trip. But let's just go down history. The deputy president has made 3 private visits to Uganda this year alone. And this, sources from the president say the last trip that happened in less than a month caught the president off guard. So then, can you fault the state for acting the way it did?
Actually, let me try and say something before I answer your question of what my brother Alex Matera has talked about. I come from Busia, specifically Busia town at the border. And Busia town at the border, I've been born and raised at that place. I've grown up at that place. And crossing to Uganda, for us people around Busia, we do not need any permission from anybody. We do not need any document. So long as you have your national ID, you just cross to Uganda. In fact, I have a
President Joe,
where I've planted cassava. You just cross. What I'm trying to say is this. Sorry.
But you say people just cross however they want, but you're not the deputy president. We're talking about the deputy president here.
Yes, I'm building my case.
Okay.
What I'm saying is this. For the last 7 years or 8 years, the deputy president has been traveling all over the world without those seeking permission from anybody. And the way you have asked Alex about the circular from Joseph Kinyua in 2017, that circular specifically stated the state officers who needed permission and where they were supposed to get that permission. For MPs, for elected leaders, they seek clearance from the speakers. For executive officers, that is cabinet secretary and PSS, they were supposed to seek permission from Joseph Kinyua, and it exempted the presidency. In fact, the president and the deputy president were not supposed to seek any clearance whatsoever. Then the second thing, Oscar Sudi and Ndindi Nyoro are elected leaders. We should not think Oscar Sudi and Ndindi Nyoro are just anybody else. Oscar Sudi and Ndindi Nyoro are elected leaders. They are representing a certain constituency. So if they are among the people who are traveling with the deputy president, that is okay. Then we cannot discuss the fundamental rights of a human person for free because of freedom of movement without bringing in the issue of Miguna. And we cannot allow this issue about the deputy president being caged and being restricted from traveling without highlighting the issue of Miguna. That thing happened in 2017. The court has pronounced itself on the same matter, and we need, as a country, to obey the rule of law. These things that they are spinning around, these are just excuses. And for another thing, you cannot criminalize associating with a political leader in this country. To an extent that you label a foreign investor a terrorist, you are spoiling the image of this country. Then you wonder, why is it that investors are no longer investing in this country and going to invest in neighboring country? It's because of simple things like this one, where a whole country, our security operators have been included into a political narrative to an extent that they
Joe, let me cut you short.
Serious.
Joe, let me just cut you short briefly. You're talking about the fact that investors are going to other countries, but here we're seeing the deputy president take an investor away from his country to a neighboring country. What does that say about him?
Because the current government headed by the President Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta have made doing business in this country unbearable. And this thing started in 2015. Companies were winding up in this country and going to neighboring countries. And that's why we are talking about changing our economic model, decriminalizing certain activities in this country, providing a conducive environment for businesses to operate in this country so that we can attract investors. But what are we doing? We are labeling investors terrorists.
Coming back to you, Alex, I'll just let you respond to that.
It's actually quite interesting, and like I said, once you subscribe to the hustler narrative, I think you seem to have that urge of throwing all the kind of rationality and all kind of knowledge and wisdom that you have acquired all those years. I don't know what is very peculiar with the hustler school of thought. And probably just to give a rejoinder to what Joe is talking about, first and foremost, a deputy president has to be patriotic to the country that he serves. He has to be patriotic to this particular country. If it's an issue of investment, and they were talking first before they started hobnobbing from modern fruit farming to setting up a plant for the manufacturing of vaccines, all those things can be done here. Deputy President comes from Rift Valley, one of the most fertile areas of this particular country. If it's about fruit farming, why wasn't the investor taken to Eldoret or Kitale from where I come from? Or why was it not taken to Nyeri, where they're actually also cultivating fruits, or Makueni, that has a very successful story in the cultivation of mangoes? That is the kind of investment that I thought we were looking and talking about. Secondly, when you talk about the bottom-up approach, which I think it's basically a fallacy and a propaganda that is just meant to hoodwink the young people of this country. Why, if it comes to manufacturing, you are taking the investors to the nearby country, and yet you want to come back and blame the government that is not offering a conducive environment for the prosperity of private businesses? And yet he was saying that he was in Uganda in his private capacity. Even in Kenya, he can act in his private capacity and ensure that these investors are here, they have invested here, they have set up manufacturing companies here, they have set up those kind of plants that he's talking about, the kind of farms that he's talking about, they can actually be set here. Thirdly, in as far as the tag over terrorism is concerned, that is not something that actually came from government. It is something that came with the media. And if you do a simple Google search with that particular name, you'll get the kind of stories that are there. And us as citizens, I think we need to demand for responsibility, and we need to demand also for answers from the Deputy President. If he's walking around with a person with suspicious character, a person who has been flagged down by Interpol, a person who has been flagged down with even the countries that we are working with. You heard the kind of stories that this guy has been involved in. He has been flagged down in Germany, he has been flagged down in France. Those are our serious partners in terms of international development and donor funding of the kind of projects that we're having in this country. So we don't want to get in a position where we are in conflict with the international partners because of a particular individual. And thirdly, fourthly, and just bringing it to a close, the Deputy President sits in the National Security Committee. We do not expect the National Security Committee to give us all the classified information, but he sits there. He knows the kind of information that is coming. Again, it's very suspicious for the Deputy President always to be hobnobbing from Kenya, from Wilson Airport to Entebbe or Kampala. Every now and then, he has made those trips 3 or 4 times, and he has also gone to Tanzania. Even for us, we are suspicious of those kind of activities that are going. And I know you know, in this kind of era where we have propaganda and we have all kind of social media information going up and forth, there is need for him to tell us what the benefit of these trips that he has been making, both in his private life and again in his public life. And to bring it to a close, Ashley, I think it's important going forward for us as the young people of this country. We need to have this discussion, and I think whether we have it now or after the elections is something that we cannot escape the concern of Kenyans, that once you are elected into public office, once you are a public officer, this thing of saying that you can also be a private business person should cease. You doing business with government or other external agency, something that needs to be flagged down. You need to concentrate in the kind of mandate that you've been given by the people and the kind of office that you've been given by this particular government. Because, for instance, I think it was uncouth for the Deputy President to talk about brokerage, because what he was doing is basically brokerage, that he's taking an investor from Turkey, rather than investing in Kenya, he's taking him again to invest in Uganda. And on the flip side of that, he also talks about making a phone call to Equity Bank and ensuring that this particular person gets a 15 billion shillings to go, 15 billion shilling loan to go and invest in Uganda. And when he comes back to Kenya, what he's offering our young people is basically wheelbarrows, is basically issues of kiosk and what have you. And we know that if we have to uplift this economy into a middle-income economic status, then we need to invest in manufacturing. The manufacturing that is exporting to Uganda is what the youth of this country need. The kind of investors that is taking there is the kind of investors that this country needs, so that we can actually propel our young people from unemployment and destitution.
All right, just to put it out there that the Turkish embassy did say that Aydin did not have any criminal record. But before we continue with this conversation, I want us to take a look at this story. Now, Interior Principal Secretary Karanja Kibicho says that the Deputy President did not have all the necessary documents required for travel. PS Kibicho insisting that it is the only reason why anyone would be stopped from leaving the country. Kibicho added that any civil servant intending to travel abroad must seek clearance. He did not, however, explain which document the Deputy President did not have. Just listen into that.
Simply because we don't have a platform to speak is not a justification for people to continue just laying unnecessary accusation around us. I put it to you. I didn't call, any immigration officer, and neither did CS Matiang'i. Because when people are talking about OP, they most likely are referring to either of us. I did not call. I wasn't in the country. I've consulted with my CS. He didn't call anyone in immigration to tell them about this matter, and neither did he have knowledge. If you are not aware, they even had a conversation. He should have said that about that trip when there was that problem. So it's good that all the time we are fair to everybody, especially as civil servants who don't have a platform to answer back. I repeat, I did not make a telephone call. I will not make, and I've never made. CS Matiang'i did not make. He has never made a call with respect to travel of the Deputy President. For any civil servant to travel, and let me start, not civil servant, for anyone to travel out of this country, the responsibility of our immigration department is to check the validity of the documents presented before them, if they comply with the requirements of international travel. If you are traveling yourself, today you'll be required to have a valid passport, you'll be required to have a valid visa, you'll be required to have a return air ticket if you are Kenyan, you'll be required to have a COVID certificate showing negative if you are just a private citizen. When you present those to immigration, all of them must be accurate, and they check, are they accurate? They also check under a system called PISIS whether you are barred from traveling by any other country through the immigration international system called PISIS. If you pass that test, they allow you. If you don't, they stop you. And that happens to every Kenyan, whether they are living or coming to the country. Now, for civil servants and public servants, there is an extra requirement that is not starting now. Don't know why you're making a big issue out of it. These are things that started during the era of Moi, and we have been with them, been a PS for 11 years, and they have been there, I can assure you, that whenever you are traveling, you require travel clearance by the head of public service, if you are a certain category, I would believe. For example, I've just returned from an international travel, and there's a form that we fill, a form of government that we fill that shows where you are traveling, your source of funds, who will cater for that, how many days. That goes to your boss. In my case, it will go to the CS, who will say he is aware, he is ready to release me because he knows that there is someone to take care of my responsibilities while I'm away. He releases me. Then that form will go to the head of public service, who I am sure would do further consultation because I'm a public servant in a senior position. Then I would receive a letter that says your travel request has been cleared and you are allowed to travel between these dates. If it's a private visit, they'll say the cost of this travel will be met privately. If it is government work, the cost of travel will be met by government. If it's shared by institution, it will be stated in that letter. That letter is a letter that you go and leave with the immigration officer at the airport of departure. All civil servants do that. And I wouldn't know in this case which of the documents I've stipulated to you was violated.
All right, that is PS Karanja Kibichu putting his, word into this whole issue. But I want to come back to you, Alex, before we go to Joe, because you had mentioned this. Now, the PS has just said the only reason why he wouldn't be allowed to travel is because he lacked necessary documents. But then do you think the deputy president would go to the airport to travel without the necessary documents? Alex.
I think, Ashley, from where I sit, you need to learn someone, or before you come up to a conclusion, you need to see the kind of behaviors that he has done previously. Deputy President from 2017 going onwards is someone who has shown flagrant and blatant disregard to regulations. He has shown blatant disregard to the rule of law. Even when you talk about politically, someone who's championing the manifesto of a political party that is not his own, which is against the Political Parties Act. So this is not the first time that he's breaking against the law. And is someone who is shown a certain level of impunity when it comes to respecting the rule of law. When we are talking about COVID protocols that have been set by WHO and has been set by the Ministry of Health, he's still going across the country, attracting crowds and addressing rallies. That is actually against what we consider to be our Kenyan law at the moment when we are handling with a pandemic. So for me, I think it won't be a surprise that the Deputy President, courtesy of the kind of experience and the kind of person that he has shown to be previously, he can actually present himself to the Immigration Department at Wilson or JKIA and assume that everyone knows that he's a Deputy President and therefore he's supposed to travel without presenting the requisite documents that has been alluded by the PS.
Okay.
And I think it's also important for him to realize that he is holding a public office and that particular position does not come easily. Is something that he also needs to take responsibility of. And just also to remind him what I've also talked about, that once he took the oath of office, he does not have a private life. His life continues to be public. He's a state officer, and his interest in terms of private or public has to be part and parcel of the interest of the state and those ones that have been mandated by this country to offer security to him and to ensure that wherever he goes, he is accorded the kind of respect that that particular office deserves.
Okay, Joe, coming to you, Interior Principal Secretary says that the Deputy President did not have all the necessary documents required to travel. Your thoughts on this before we continue?
That story from the PS of Interior is just an excuse. It's actually a lame excuse. And the next time when he tries to lie in front of Kenyans, he should think first before you throw such a lie. But you can also remember with the Miguna story, it is the same line that the Minister of Interior used, that Miguna did not have the necessary document, and yet he had the necessary document. And that's why even you are finding, my brother Alex is finding it very difficult to answer that question. The person of the position of Deputy President cannot travel without the necessary document. He's accorded the necessary document. So he had all those documents. It was just, these are just excuses. Then the next thing is this. Uganda is a leading trading partner with this country. So any transaction that any Kenyan is involved with the Uganda, it's for the benefit of Kenya. And that investment in Uganda, according to Deputy President's explanation, is also for the benefit of Kenya. And second of it, he went there also to learn and try to understand the mechanism of how Uganda is succeeding in food production and food security. Then the last thing also is this. DCI and NIS should not be involved in just looking for gossip in town of which politician is associating with the Deputy President. DCI or our security apparatus need to be serious to an extent that they can spread a story of an investor being a terrorist and the embassies and the embassy of Turkey comes out and clear the name of that person. All of these things can be summed up to Madharau. They succeeded to humiliate the Deputy President. But whatever they're telling us now is just stories and excuses.
Joe, staying with you, yes, the Deputy President did say he wanted to go to Uganda to look at the way the Wealth Fund is working there. But then let's not forget, 3 trips in the past 1 year already he's made to Kampala in Uganda. And then this was a 4th one. Did he really need to go there for him to, you know, look at how the Wealth Fund works?
Pardon?
I'm just asking about what you mentioned about the fact that the Deputy President was going there to look at how the Wealth Fund has helped farmers there in Uganda. Did he necessarily need to go there, considering he's already made 3 trips in the past year?
Yes, you see, it was necessary for him to go there to benchmark because we have tried certain things in this country. We have tried the Wezo Fund, we have tried the Youth Fund, we have tried so many things, but they are not working. And him going there was to try and look at the implementation stage of Wealth Fund. how does that money reach to the farmer? And how do farmers utilize that money in Uganda? And like here in Kenya, we have set up all those necessary funds and agency to avail resources to the farmers, but it's not working. So it is necessary for us to benchmark and learn from our neighbors. Because I've seen a story going around that Kenya needs to compare itself with Singapore and other Asian countries. But here, our trading partner across the border has managed through Wealth Fund to enable its citizens to have food security. But here in this country, every financial year, we are using 15 billion shillings to provide relief food for our people. So it is necessary.
So this is when you have realized, or the Deputy President has realized, that it's time to go and benchmark all those years. And then you've talked about benchmarking while taking a different investor to that country, Joe? Those are the questions that are being raised. You're benchmarking while taking a different investor to the same country, which is not your own country.
You see, the nearest country and the easiest way is Uganda, because Uganda is our neighboring country. Uganda is one of the leading trading partners with Kenya. And the Deputy President has a relationship with the President of Uganda, the same way our President, the former Prime Minister, and other political leaders have relationship with the President of Uganda. So it's easy for him to do that. Then the second thing to your question is that the Deputy President has a plan for this country going forward after 2022, after taking the reins of power. He's able, and he has come up with bottom-up economic model, and he's trying to find ways and easiest way available to ensure that this model works for this country. So it's actually a good thing that he went there to learn from a country where they have done it, and it's working, and it has helped that country.
All right, Joe, so then why not take those who are termed hustlers to Uganda to learn, and instead a foreign investor was being taken to Uganda? If it's all about the bottom-up approach, why not take one of our farmers then?
Why not take?
One of our farmers.
You see, it's not an issue of taking a farmer there. It's an issue of learning the implementation part of it and the setting up of the scheme and the fund. After that, now farmers can learn from farmers in Uganda. But the real thing here is about setting up the implementation, having the necessary legal frameworks and regulation, and then looking at how now can it be accessible to the farmers. From there now, farmers in this country, it's not that we lack farmers or our farmers lack the necessary skills to implement. It's just that the accessibility of those funds to the farmer is the problem in this country.
All right, we'll be coming back to continue with that conversation. I want us to take a short break. We'll be back with this discussion.